Ladies and gentlemen, we've all been conned. The cell phone over the last decade or so has slowly transformed itself into, by far and away, the most important piece of electronics in our personal lives. But there's another aspect of our lives that is being taken over by the smartphone, and that's our wallets. With the cost of a new iPhone 11 Pro topping out at over $1,100, cell phones have become ridiculously expensive. But as consumers, we tend to not even give it a second thought. And I think we would think about it more if we had to walk into Best Buy and we picked out our phone and it popped up as $1,100 on the cash register when we swiped our credit card. I think that would kind of open up our eyes as to how expensive all of this stuff was. But a handful of years ago, there was a sheer genius marketing strategy that was employed by both the cell phone companies and the data providers. You see, now instead of paying $1,100 out of pocket for a cell phone, all you got to do is, sign up for this data provider, and they'll give you a 2-year contract. And with that contract, they will give you that iPhone for free. And a free phone sounds pretty amazing, right? Like everybody wants free stuff. But as we all know, there is no such thing as free. Somebody is paying for it in one way or another. So really all they're doing is they're taking this $1,100 price tag and they're chopping it up into 24 different bits. And then they are tacking that on top of what it would normally cost you every month for your cell phone coverage with your provider, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, whoever it is that you're using. So instead of one massive, $1,100 payment, what you really have is 24 much more manageable payments that don't seem so unreasonable. Over time, we've just kind of become accustomed to these, high cell phone payments. According to a recent study in 2018 done by the National Bureau of Labor and Statistics, American consumers aged 25 to 64 spend an average of $114 per month on their cell phone plan. That is astronomical. Like, how did it get to be that high? It's not as expensive as our car payments, and it's roughly in line with some of our other payments, like our internet service provider. Cable is getting ridiculously expensive. So it's kind of in between all of that stuff. And so, based on how often we use our cell phone, we just kind of justify this cost, and we don't really think, well, why does it cost this much to begin with? And the worst part is, because the price of this phone was chopped up into 24 payments, that means your monthly cell phone plan is higher than realistically it should be if you had just bought your phone outright. And this means that at the end of your contract, at the end of your 2 years, your phone should theoretically be paid for. So in a perfect world, that would mean that your cell phone data plan, suddenly becomes cheaper because now you're no longer paying this extra money to actually purchase your phone. But we all know that's not true. Like, your cell phone bill stays at this ridiculously high payment. And so you're kind of double screwed, because either now you redo a new contract, in which case they are giving you a free $1,100 phone again, so ultimately you're just repaying for a new phone again, or they're going to put you on a month-to-month plan and your payments are still going to be high. So now you're still making payments towards this phone. So, if you don't swap your phone out for another 2 years, then essentially you paid an extra $1,100 for that phone. So your $1,100 iPhone suddenly became a $2,200 iPhone. So you're screwed either way. You either buy a $1,000 cell phone every 2 years, or you're stuck overpaying for an old cell phone. So either way, you're paying the same amount of money. Like, there's got to be a better way to do all of this. And thankfully there is. So currently, I pay $13 per month for my cell phone plan by using something called an MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator. So essentially what these MVNOs are is they take all of the unused capabilities, the unused data that these big companies like Sprint and Verizon have. So they basically rent space on their networks and then resell it at a discount to end consumers. And Sprint is happy because they're able to sell some of this unused bandwidth, this unused space. And the MVNO companies, they're happy because they get to take a little profit, acting as the middleman. And you're happy because you're paying $13 for cell phone coverage. So with these mobile virtual network operators, you do typically have to bring your own phone with you. So that means either buying a brand new phone outright, or better yet, just keep on using that slightly aged phone that you've had for the last 2 years and your contract with your previous provider has expired. Just keep using that one instead of buying newer and newer cell phones. And with these MVNOs, you typically get to keep your old cell phone number. You just simply port it over into their new system. And since you are using the exact same cell towers, the same overall network that the big boys use, Verizon, Sprint, all of those players, since you're using their cell phone towers, you'll have coverage in the exact same areas that you previously had coverage in. Now there's a bunch of different MVNO companies. And typically they're all going to run on different networks, so there might be a handful of MVNOs that use the Sprint networks, a handful that are going to use the Verizon networks, etc. So obviously you're going to want to see which providers have the best coverage in your area, and then pick one of the MVNOs that fits into that category. But there's a bunch of different MVNOs. I use Tello just because they have good coverage in my area. But there's a bunch of other companies, Ting, Red Mobile, Freedom Pop, Cricket Wireless, you name it, there's a bunch of them. And one of the best things about these mobile virtual networks is there's no contracts. So you're not locked into a 1 or a 2 year contract. It's simply a pay-as-you-go, month-by-month system. Additionally, a lot of times they have very individualized plans so that you can pick and choose which features you really need. Do you need unlimited minutes? Do you need unlimited texts? Or would 1,000 texts per month do? Some people don't use their phones very often. My mom and dad, they barely use their cell phones at all. So for somebody like them, they might be able to use a cell phone plan that has 500 minutes per month, and that would be more than fine for them. So currently with my $13 a month plan, I think I have unlimited calls, unlimited texts, and I have 1 gigabyte of high-speed data. After that, I still have unlimited data, but it's a little bit slower. I think it's at 2G speeds as opposed to 5G. So this means I can still use everything that I really need. I can still surf the web. I can still use GPS. I've never experienced any degradation as far as speeds go when it comes to this slightly slower speed. But if you're using your phone exclusively to, stream Netflix or something like that, you might have a little bit of problem with that. And some of you might be saying, well, 1 gigabyte of data is not a whole lot. Well, it really depends on what you're using it for. Like I said, if you're using it to stream videos everywhere you go, then you're right. 1 gigabyte is not going to be that much. But what I use my cell phone for, I typically don't even use any data to begin with. Because the places that I use my cell phone the most, which is going to be at home, work, or at the gym, all 3 of those locations I'm going to be on using Wi-Fi, so I'm not even going to be using any data. Now, unfortunately, like most things, there's going to be a set of pros and cons that go along with everything. So it's not all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows with these virtual networks. There are some drawbacks as well. And primarily that's going to be because you are sort of a third-party user. If during times of high usage, you're going to be kind of lower tiered. So this can be problematic if, let's say, that you are at a concert and there's thousands of people there and you're all trying to make calls or text to your friends or upload that new selfie that you just took. in places like this where it's really congested traffic, you will probably see a high amount of degradation when it comes to your overall signal strength, since the people that are using the primary network, the Sprint or the Verizon, they're going to be given priority. But how often are you in a situation like that? And can't your super awesome selfie, can't you just wait an hour until you get home to post that to your social media account? Additionally, overall your speeds might be slightly slower. So some networks might offer, 20 megs per second of downloadable content, whereas with the MVNO providers, you might only get 8. But even at this slightly slower speed of 8 megs per second, that's going to be more than enough that you're going to need for anything that you're actually going to be using. If you're trying to stream movies on your phone with Netflix or something like that, streaming high-def videos typically only takes about 5 megs a second. So 8 is going to more than cover, realistically, anything that you're going to be using this data for anyway. Now, if the average consumer, like I said, spends an average of $114 per month on their cell phone plan, and then you suddenly switch to a plan that only costs $13 a month, is it going to be worth $100 a month just for these slightly faster speeds that you don't need anyway? And do you really need unlimited data? I sure don't. I use Wi-Fi for most of my data needs. But even if you did need unlimited data, there are unlimited data options on these MVNO networks. And if you're like me and you have switched to these cheaper MVNO network providers, then that's going to be an extra $100 in your pocket each and every month. So let's just say hypothetically that you decided to invest that money into the stock market. Now, over the course of the years, the stock market typically averaged, give or take, around a 10% return on your investment. So if you had invested this $100 at a 10% rate of return over a 30-year time span, over the course of the years, this money would grow to close to $200,000. So think about that for a minute. Your current cell phone plan is going to cost you $200,000 more than my cell phone plan is going to cost me. So now, are those increased speeds really worth it? 200 grand is a ton of money. You might not be able to fully retire off of 200 grand, but it's going to get you a hell of a long ways towards your retirement goals. So when you put it into perspective like that, is paying 80 or 100 or 120 bucks a month for your cell phone plan worth it? Or is it worth considering looking into some of these third-party data providers, these mobile virtual network operators? I think so. So that's going to pretty well do it for us today, folks. I'm going to leave some of the links to some of the more popular MVNO networks down in the description box. If you found this video useful, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below. It really helps the YouTube channel out, and it doesn't cost you anything. I have new content every week, and I'll see you all again next time. Thanks.